Hey there, it's Dr. William Curtis with Future Focus Family Medicine and the NRG Tribe. Wanted to kind of talk to you today about the upcoming holiday season. This is a really common time frame where people completely revert to sort of habits that they worked really hard during the year to reverse. Things like diet and lifestyle habits and things like that. So, for those of you that have followed my blog work and podcast, a lot of you have understood that I teach a fairly low carbohydrate diet, and I emphasize proper dietary habits and lifestyle changes to improve your health. And a lot of conditions like diabetes and obesity and all kinds of medical problems like this can be reversed if we apply consistent dietary and lifestyle changes. So what I want to talk about is the cultural norms that we all experience going into holiday season. Some people have more or less of this, depending on their family history, but it is a real common time of the year as we get close to the Thanksgiving season, where people tend to go into the holiday with the mindset that almost habitually that I've got to splurge, I've got to go and just I can eat whatever. It's the holidays, and if I don't, I'm being neglected. And I want you to just kind of realize that that really is just a cultural habit that we're taught. It's a behavior that's triggered by the holidays. The cue is that we're coming into Thanksgiving. It's now time. And so there's this big build up to this big feast time, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But what I'm encouraging you is to look at it from a bigger viewpoint, like for a year-long view of this. What you don't want to do is go in and completely blow up your positive changes that you've made. If you've worked really hard, I work with a lot of patients on my Killing Diabetes program that have worked really hard to make sugar a less influential part of their diet. They're trying to improve the usage of good fats, proteins, and all the non-starchy vegetables they want, and they're staying clear of breads and grains and cereals. And they've made all this progress. I have people that are losing weight, they're reversing their diabetes. But the holidays are always this time where that habit, that cue that says, oh, now it's the time of year that because it's Thanksgiving, the pies are going to be here, the sugar's going to be here. I've got to eat it. It's just normal. It really doesn't have to work that way. And I want you to realize that you can go through the holidays and still have a great time visiting with family, friends, having a great meal, but keeping some of the momentum that you've gained, and not getting so keyed up or feel like you're being deprived if you haven't had a bunch of sugar on these meal times. So I don't want the holidays to be the green light for bad habits like excessive sugar, bunch of starches, and grain consumption. You just don't really want to do that. These things, these negative foods, they influence us hormonally and physically over time. And holidays can be a time where it can take several months to recover from that metabolically if we don't be careful during that time frame. So a few of the things I want you to think about going through the holidays. First one is pick one or two meals during this window of time that, fine, just have what you want, okay? If you feel like you really want to have a special dessert, have a special dessert, but make it that one time. And make sure that day is a day that you're very active. Get out and go for a longer walk routine or exercise routine than you typically do. Go out after a meal and go have a nice exercise or be physically active, so that you sort of mitigate some of that effect on your body. Keep negative foods to a minimum. Just because you sit down to let's say a traditional big turkey dinner doesn't mean you have to have mashed potatoes and stuffing. You can have green beans and green bean casseroles and all these different types of things that really, just steer clear of the starchy stuff, and you can have the turkey and the chicken and many of the things that you normally would do just without blowing up your diet completely with all the breads and the rolls and all that kind of stuff. So I know those meals and those things have traditional features that go with them, typical American culture at least, but you don't have to necessarily fall into that just because it's out there. Focus on quality, not quantity. So spend a lot more time looking at the quality of what you're eating on every meal versus just the mass consumption. I think that's a big key. People get into this season and it's about how much volume they've eaten. I don't think they're actually thinking about it. I think it's just a normal behavior that we've all been taught. But start looking at, hey, what's the quality of what I'm eating? Is the best flavor I can make it? Is it the best combination of, say, vegetables or meats that I can put together that will make this meal really pleasant rather than just sheer quantity? Make sure you're getting your fats and proteins. Most of the programs I teach do emphasize increased fats and at least steady protein intake. Remember, if you're looking at each meal and asking yourself, where are my good fats coming from, you will tend to eat less carbohydrates or have less cravings thereafter. That's one of the premises in my Killing Diabetes program that helps patients get away from sugar cravings, is to increase their good fats. So make sure that you're thinking about that when you sit down to your meals. For diabetics in particular, that class of listener to the Energy Tribe, don't lose the progress that you've started. It's important that you maintain. Remember, insulin is a disease of diabetes, not sugar. And so even though you might not eat a massive amount of sugar, every time you do, it spikes insulin, and then you have that whole vicious cycle that I've taught about and talked about a lot in videos like the fasting for diabetes and nutrition for diabetic videos. All of those have taught that insulin is really the disease, and insulin is an unbalanced hormone that leads to fat storage and it leads to all the progressive symptoms that we call diabetes. So I want you to think about that. If you feel like you've got to have that sugary meal, if you feel like I'm going to splurge on this, just try to mitigate that with, keep it minimal, high quality, very little bit of it, but don't neglect yourself if that's what you really feel that you want to do. Just understand the effect it's going to have on your body and try to make that a very short window of the holidays so that you don't end up, kind of losing progress that you've made through the year. For my athletes out there, I've got a lot of soccer athletes, football athletes that are trying to improve their nutrition so that they have better performance. And of course, this time of year, some of the football teams are in the playoffs, and we've got some select soccer players and athletes that are preparing for season playoffs. Remember, food is fuel, and bad fuel can lead people to be sluggish for several days, even upwards of a week after one major bad meal. So I want you to think about that. If you got big games coming up, don't go overeat. Quality versus quantity. Make sure you're not just loading up on things you don't typically eat on, like a bunch of sugar and stuff. All these accomplishments that you've made in the past, with your gains both in the gym and maybe weight loss wise and performance wise, make sure that you don't lose it all by just an extended binging period between Thanksgiving and Christmas timeframes. So again, this is a time, it's a holiday season. It's a time to, we should enjoy this time. We should enjoy the family, camaraderie, being together with friends and family. It is important. I don't want to be a downer about that. But I want you to step back from it and start looking at habits and what are the cues for good and bad habits, good and bad behaviors, good and bad nutritional choices. If most of you that have followed my work, they kind of know what you should be doing, but many struggle with the habits of change. I think a big part of that stems directly from how we are, by not recognizing where we are. And the holidays are a cue. It's now holiday season. This is going to be the cue. There's going to be candy laid out. There's going to be sweets. It's the increased feasting time that we're all accustomed to. Can you get through that time frame smart? Can you get through there, enjoy it, but not make so many bad choices during the time frame that you set back all the progress you've made through the year? I hope that makes sense. This might be one of my more unpopular posts that I put out in quite a while, but it's one of those reminders. I think holiday dietary cultures are a source of setbacks for many of my patients, and I just want you to be aware of it going in. It's not to be obsessive about it. It's not to be negative about it. It's just understand it for what it is. Maybe see if you can observe it, and see if you can make some better choices this year. As always, leave some comments, questions, suggestions. Hope you have a good holiday season, and I'll be throwing out some more topics in the coming weeks. Take care.